The Stage Door Show, celebrating the independent artist. With your host, Dave Hondell.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Stage Door Show. This is Dave Hondell. Our guest tonight is actor and screenwriter Cameron Cowperthwaite. Cameron has been seen on the amazing series American Horror Story, the thriller Pledge, as well as the popular series Shameless, and has some work about to be released, and we're excited to get into all that with him. So welcome to the show, Cameron.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Now, Cameron, I just want to start with this because, you play in a lot of thrillers that have an element of horror. And, is this something that you grew up liking, that type of thriller type movie?
I'm a huge fan of the genre, the horror genre. I love, especially where it's gone. Like, just in, I respect one of my favorite movies ever that I watched or rewatched during COVID when we all got slammed with the pandemic and we're forced to watch TV for hours and hours was John Carpenter's The Thing.
Oh, okay.
And like Halloween and like all the old school kind of like midnight horror scare fests. Those are some amazing films, but I am such a fan of where it's gone with like the Ari Asters and the Robert Eggers of the world, like The Witch and Midsommar and Hereditary. And I think this highbrow kind of like disguising like family dramas or addiction stories or grief or loss in these horror films almost makes them so much more digestible to an audience. And I think Ryan Murphy, amongst, a lot of other amazing creatives, but especially in the TV space, like Ryan really kind of started this like elevated horror on TV with American Horror Story and this anthology idea that we could, tell a different story each season. So it was such a blessing to kind of have been on that show because I used to watch it when I was in college.
Yeah.
When I was with my roommates and my friends, we would watch the show. So it was such a trip, like 5 years later, to be on it. Speaking
of, that anthology, now it's going to be coming out in more of kind of an episodic type, American Horror Stories, is coming out, is going to be told, from what I understand, in 60 minutes as opposed to over a series of episodes. Is that correct?
Yeah. Oh yeah. The new season that aired, I think they're in their fourth week now because I'm episode 7. My episode comes out on the 1st of September. And they took this Black Mirror approach, which is so fun because they're able to tie in, portions or characters or little location set pieces from their mainstay, from the horror story, the anthology series. And then also they're able to weave these kind of fast-paced, like twisted tales that are just the simple 60 minutes. So it's such a great tangential, push from the regular show. And also, they're able to tie in so much great stuff. Like in that first season when they brought the murder house back, I was like, what a great thing for the fans. Like, it's so for the fans of American Horror Story who are loyal as hell. I feel like everybody has seen everything all the way through.
Yeah, for sure. Acting in a thriller like that or a horror element movie like that, obviously there's a lot of things that go in after the fact, like post-production, there's music, there's effects, there's some lighting changes and so forth. So when you're on the set doing your scene and it's I guess a horror scene, how do you know that you nailed it when all this other stuff kind of comes in after the fact? Did you guys just have a feeling that, hey, I know this is going to nail it? Or, is that kind of how it works?
Yeah, I'm trying to get better about not kicking myself in the head after every take. Sometimes I think, especially in the horror space, sometimes it can feel so silly because there's you're right, there's no monster there, or there's no scary music that's helping you, feel the pulse of like, oh, something bad's gonna happen. So sometimes you feel like they're just like, okay, turn around and then scream, and you're like, okay, and you do your best to kind of just sell that as much as you can. So I've gotten to a place where if the director says that we got it,
you trust him.
I have to, because I can drive myself absolutely nutty. But then when you see the final product, you're always like, oh my God, okay, great, there we go.
Right. So how did you get into acting? Where did you grow up first?
I grew up on the East Coast, and in Delaware.
Oh, okay.
My mom and my dad met at the Alabama Shakespeare Festival doing theater.
Oh,
Actually,
wow.
so
Okay.
sort of kind of in the family business. And my mom is a script supervisor, and she works in New York City. And when I turned 17, I think I went to New York City to do some modeling because Mark Wahlberg, and like I had heard people, Channing Tatum, like people had broken in this way. And I didn't really, even having my mom in the business, she's always showing up on set when everyone's already cast. So
right.
I had a good amount of knowledge to start off. Like I knew how hard this business was
Yeah.
to start off, but like the actual casting process was kind of new for everyone.
Yeah.
I knew, family included. And I ended up taking these photos, and my mom, being a mom, proud of these professional headshots for modeling portfolio things I had done. She showed them to a friend of hers on set who happened to have a sister who was an agent in Los Angeles. And she liked my look, and she sent me an audition to put on tape. I was young, so I think it was not so much about credits, so much as like, let's see what this kid can do.
Right.
And I got a call back for it, and I didn't have any training. I didn't know what I was doing. It was truthfully, the universe was doing me a solid.
Right.
And but the fact that I got good feedback, my mom's friend's sister, Ro, who's still my agent now, by the way, like 10 years later.
Wow.
She was like, if you ever come out to LA, let's do this dance. And I did.
Yeah. It's talking about the hard work, for aspiring actors that are listening right now. I think a lot of people see you guys either on the red carpet, they see you in interviews or, trailers or whatever. And it seems so glamorous, right? It seems like, wow, this is something I want to do. I want to have that. But they don't understand the work that goes into it. So, I mean, even for somebody who's been in the business for a long time, we're talking early hours, we're talking long hours, we're talking, hearing no so much, from auditions. And, so talk about that hard work that goes into what you do. And, the next project isn't always, guaranteed, right?
Oh, dude, never. Dustin Hoffman in an interview was like, I think at the time of the interview was like 60 something, mid 60s. Dustin Hoffman, mid 60s. I don't know how many Oscar nominations later that is, but he was in the interview. He's like, if I got a yes every single day from here on out to the day I died, I still have more no's than yeses.
Wow.
So when you hear something like that, I think that this business is for the hopeless romantics. It's for the dreamers. It is for the illogical. If you sometimes try to put this business in some quantifiable state, you drive yourself crazy because it doesn't make any sense. It took me a little bit of time to kind of, break out of this like scholastic idea where if I study for the test, I get an A, because that's just not how it goes. And it can take a minute to kind of flip your mind into, I'm going to do this because I love it. I don't really care what people think. I'm here for the long haul. When I moved out to California from the East Coast, my dad was like, look, I'm only going to ask you one thing before you go. Can you do anything else? Do you want to do anything else? And I was like, no, I don't. And he was like, then Godspeed.
Yeah.
Because if you can, I think when people say that saying, if you could never think of yourself doing something else, then do it. It's just simply to not, I don't think some people are kind of ruining people's dreams in that regard so much as they're kind of, it's a cautionary tale because the rejection can be so hard sometimes.
Yeah.
So it really truthfully is just, if it's something for you and you love it to your heart's content, and I do, and I love the people, like I love acting.
Yeah.
I love acting, but I feel like one of the things I love the most is being on set. It's the summer camp vibe where all these people come together from all different walks of life and all different places in the world. And we all come into this one location together to do this one thing. And this is this magnetic bubble. And it's so infectious. It's like such a rush and such a drug to be there that when I lose it, I feel like I'm saying goodbye to family members
Yeah,
now, you know,
yeah, right.
and you're just itching to get back.
Yeah.
And I think that the hard work that goes in is really, you know, knowing you want to do it, knowing you love it. And then also, you know, trying to be a master of your craft. I'm a huge supporter of those who, like, no matter how long you've been doing it, go to class, get training, work on your auditions. One of my acting coaches, which I love, John Rosenfeld, he says, you don't get any extra credit for doing this by yourself.
Right.
It's a team sport.
Yeah.
Get friends to help you, get acting coaches to help you. Bryan Cranston, in his memoir, was talking about how he was on Seinfeld playing the dentist, and the gaffer is rigging a light, and he's on the set working through, you know, the props, making sure he knows where everything is. So he looks like it's his office. He looks like he knows what he's doing. And the gaffer was like, you should huff the laughing gas yourself before you give it to the patient. And Bryan Cranston does it on the first take. The entire set erupts with laughter, and it made it into the show. And he goes to say that you got to be nice to everybody. You gotta, it's such a collaborative art form. You never know where that idea is going to come from. And I think a lot of that hard work is kind of stripping that ego down.
Yeah.
You know, and rolling with the punches and just pushing through. Any advice I would have for anyone is that just keep going. Just don't quit, man. If you are still around, if you just haven't quit and you are still around, you will do fine.
Yeah. I mean, that's great advice. I was thinking to myself, you're on set. Talk about the first time you walked onto a set, like a major set, and you heard action for the first time and then cut for the first time. What was that feeling like for you?
I think it was a blur. I think I remember it was for Criminal Minds. And I just met Gary Sinise, and I was like, oh my God. Like,
I'm on a show with Gary Sinise.
I'm on a show with Gary Sinise, you know, Of Mice and Men is like one of the greatest things ever. And you're like, hey, huge fan. He's like, great to meet you. You start to what I started to realize after being on set for the first time is that everybody is so normal.
Yeah. Right.
It's so humanizing. You know what I mean? It's like seeing your high school teacher like outside of class. You know, you're like, oh my God, you go grocery shopping.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Once you get that first, like, you know, whirlwind action cut out of the way, because it was so exciting because it was so loud. I remember the director was like, okay, and action, because it was a big set.
Yeah.
So it felt like the energy was just so heightened. And then it just starts to become like you're just like going to work every day.
Right.
It's such an interesting ebb and flow emotionally.
Get those butterflies out of the way right away.
Oh yeah, you need to, because then you come to realize that your fellow actor, your director, everybody's there to help you. You're there to help them. It becomes, like I said, it's just this infectious camaraderie.
Yeah. No, it sounds like it for sure. And, you know, what do you say the most challenging part of being an actor, you know, regardless of whether it's on the set or auditioning or, you know, anything? What would be the most challenging piece?
Auditioning.
Yeah.
Auditioning sucks.
Yeah.
Auditioning sucks. I hate it.
Yeah.
I've tried to learn. I learned to like it. I'm not a huge fan of where we're at with the loss of the room. Mm-hmm. You know, having to do this self-tape world. I think there's definitely pros, like, oh, I get to audition for something that's in New York and I don't live in New York, and that can be awesome.
Yeah. But
I just miss seeing the casting director's face, because you're sending this. Not only was auditioning hard, but now you send this shit into the ether.
Yeah.
You may never hear anything, and at least even if you didn't hear anything after an audition in the room with casting, you still were like, well, they laughed when I did that thing, you know, or they said good job when I walked out the door. Now to have that, it's
not hear back. Yeah,
tough, man. It's tough.
Cameron, what is your I guess what's your craziest auditions? Everybody has a crazy audition, you know, if you've been doing this for a little bit. So do you have a crazy audition story?
Yeah, I do actually. I mean, I've got a couple. Everybody has those, like, oh my God, they will never see me again. But I try to push boundaries with the audition. And I've learned, even with the self-tape space that we're in now, to kind of play with this medium. I think I've started to stop hating it.
Yeah.
Start to learn this game and try my best to get good at the game of, like, using this medium to my advantage. and I auditioned for Jeffrey Dahmer.
Oh wow!
Like a year ago. I obviously I didn't get the part. It didn't go to me, but I made a home video like as Jeffrey Dahmer that I attached to the audition. That was
wow,
a nut job, just totally outside the realm of what they were asking for.
Yeah, but that's awesome.
And I showed it to a couple of friends, and they were like, "Holy shit!" And what? Like they were like, "I don't want to see this," and it was like, "Why'd you send this to me at night?" Like I pretended that I ran around in my underwear. Like it was nutty.
Yeah,
it was absolutely nutty, and it was, you know, but it was something I had to do for myself.
Yeah.
Because these auditions are, and I say this to any actor who is just starting out, like these auditions, even though they're the worst part, even though they're the work, being on set's the paid vacation, you get to play the role for a little bit.
Yeah.
And when that came across my desk, I was like, okay,
give it a shot.
So I would put that in I would put that in my nuttiest of audition moments, I have to say.
Did you hear back from them at all on that?
Yeah, they were like, wow. I think casting was like, this is super cool. And we love that you went this direction, and I think they also I think they love the actors that take risks or do something different. You know, they don't want you to like go completely off script, but if it's within the world or the tone at which they're looking for, I think they like something that shakes up the pot, because, you know, they're seeing the same scene read over and over and over and over again.
Right,
so
exactly. Well,
try to stand out.
Entertaining, if nothing else, right?
Yeah, and that's how I looked at it.
So, Cameron, you know, I know you're a writer as well, and you know, was there something that inspired you, I guess, to start writing? Was there a screenplay out there or a movie that you really loved the writing that kind of inspired you to start doing that yourself?
Besides, I find Quentin Tarantino's scripts just insanely fun to read. The way if anybody hasn't read them, one of the things I do is I will if I see a movie that's awesome, because sometimes it's hard to transfer the page to the screen. So if I see a movie that I'm like, this is amazing, 10 out of 10, I'll try to find the script, go back and watch the movie and read the script after I've already seen it once, so that I can try to see why someone saw this on the page and knew it was just going to work.
Yeah.
And there are definite clues to the way people write things that you're like, oh, this is why this is so successful. And Quentin Tarantino is probably one of my favorite directors, but also screenwriters. Like if the movie never got made, the script is awesome. The way he writes his action lines and the prose are so spunky and fun that you are absolutely aware why the tone of this movie is so exciting. Because when you read it, it's so palpable, the way he writes and constructs his sentences. So when I write, I try to steal a little bit of that energy that I found so inviting. I was like, it just makes everything such a page turner.
When you write, also, do you write with that vision in mind, as if you're the DP and you can see visually as you're writing it? Do you see where it's going to take place, and you try to put yourself there?
Yeah, I try my best to some people, some scripts I've read, I've read the Inception screenplay, and that entire sequence, I mean, I think enough times passed to spoil a movie, but that entire sequence where the hallway is rotating.
Yeah.
It just says they fight in a hallway.
Right.
That's it. And I as much as I love that, I'm like, well, how do they fight in the hallway?
Right.
So
what does this hallway look like? Yeah.
Yeah. So I try to be as descriptive as possible.
Are you out in LA, or you're in LA?
Yeah,
right?
I am.
So moving out to LA, I mean, that had to have been a big move, and you know, from coming from the East Coast to the West Coast. So on our last episode, we talked about one of the things is making sure that you're comfortable in your living situation and where you live, and because it could be a different just an environment, that has a lot to do with, your happiness outside of acting and so forth.
Yeah.
So when you moved out to LA, was that like a culture shock for you, or was that something that you were able to kind of ease into that a little bit? And how has that experience been out in the West Coast for you?
Culture shock for sure. Just the pace is a little bit different that I'm used to, the city I'm used to traveling to for vacation. Also, my mom lives in Queens, so
yeah, New
York is what I was like conditioned to be used to. But moving there was hard, man. It was hard. I was poor, dude. I was
a true struggling actor. Right?
Yeah, I had I think I lost like 14 pounds.
Wow.
When I moved there, because I was like, you get to a point where you're like, I got to pay rent, but I also have to eat and I have to pick one.
Right. Yeah. One or the other.
And I got support from my family. I was never going to die.
Right,
I was never worried about that. But everybody can only do so much. And it's an expensive city when you're not used to paying what you pay. Cause going to New York. Yeah. But I grew up in Delaware where we don't have tax.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I would walk into a store and be like, oh, how much is this actually? Like, right. Yeah. This is just so different.
Yeah, exactly.
And the traffic, man.
Yeah.
I kept getting in trouble because I kept being like, do I have to leave like 3.5 hours before I need to be literally anywhere?
Yeah.
Because
yeah, exactly.
I kept misjudging how long it took to get everywhere. And that threw me for a loop. But once I found like some solid people, and I was lucky. I moved out from college. My roommate for pretty much my whole life out here. We were friends in college, and he moved out to be a writer in comedy. And he's shout out to Norman. And he's killing it. And he's doing great. But we did it together. I mean, I felt had I done that alone, I don't know how hard that would have been.
So yeah, you were able to support each other, and that
Oh yeah,
and
I was
emotionally. Anyway, yeah. What is what's the most rewarding part of being an actor? What's the thing that you just lay back at night and say, "Wow, this is so cool"? I mean, what is that one thing that's the most rewarding piece?
The most rewarding piece, I think. Not to get too existential, but the idea of playing other people, the empathy that it takes to find yourself in a character, because I think you immediately get off on the wrong foot as a bad acting trope is when you judge a character. You see a character on the page, I love what Val Kilmer said. Val Kilmer, when he did Top Gun, read Iceman and was like, there wasn't a lot on the page. He's like, I got to come up with something. And he's like, instead of just a bad acting moment is judging the character that Iceman's a dick. He's not nice. He's arrogant.
Sure.
But what Val Kilmer did that wasn't on the page at all, but he gave himself is that, well, what if he had a horrible relationship with his dad and he spent his entire life trying to please him and never did?
Yeah.
And you get the same edge.
Right.
You get that same sharpness, but now that makes me feel bad. And I think that, or wonder what that would be like. So I think my favorite part is actually kind of trying on the clothes of someone else and seeing how they fit, seeing how it feels, seeing what life might be like. It kind of is a little eye-opening, and especially when you're playing someone vastly different or with a belief system that you don't have.
Yeah.
And I think it just makes you a lot more empathetic to people's situations. And I really do love the I think what that does for me mentally, I think it's pretty therapeutic.
Yeah, I was just going to say that because several actors have said the same thing that you just said, and I think as a human being, it can't do anything but help you kind of see the good in other people, even if it's hard to, right?
Yeah, no, it's such an awesome way to express yourself, because I feel like all of us can do it. Some people are like, I'm not that creative. I'm like, yes, you are.
Exactly.
Like you've been conditioned to think one way. You've been told boys don't cry,
right.
or something of that nature that when you get outside yourself, I think it helps you discover a lot of your other parts of yourself that you have also shut off.
Yeah.
There's a lot of self-exploration that goes in that goes into this business that I think, it's work that we should all be doing anyway.
Well, and I was on one of my other shows, I was talking about the fact that you can be creative being a cook or a chef or a baker or maybe somebody who likes to draw or somebody who paints vehicles. It doesn't matter what you do. Yeah. If you can create, creating anything is, I think, therapeutic. And I think we were talking also about just like you said, being nice to people. And,
oh man. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Be nice to everyone. Also, first off, be nice to everyone just because you should, but also yeah, you have no clue who's coming back and who for what reason. I know a lot of people, my biggest kind of experience with that is in the world of Ryan Murphy. I've been blessed to work with him more than one time. He is insanely loyal.
Yeah.
Because he wants to work with great people who want to be there. So that person on whatever show you were on, if you're lucky enough to come back, you see a lot of the same people. So that person that was a writer, well, now they're a director. That now they're an EP. Now they're a producer.
Yeah.
Now they're in charge of literally everything. So,
right.
I try to go in and smile as much as humanly possible. I mean, we're not going to the dentist,
right.
Exactly. It's supposed to be fun. Even if we're doing emotional stuff, it's still supposed to be fun. So I try to go in with as much high spirited energy as I can. Cause also you just want to be with, if you're going to be with these people for 17 hours a day.
Right. Yeah.
Because to your point where you said, there's a lot of glamour. It's like, yeah, but there's a lot of forced calls and you got to be here way earlier than you want to be, or you got to sit. I just did a prosthetic piece where I had to be on set at 4 a.m, sat in the makeup chair for 4.5 hours to then shoot a 12-hour day.
Wow. And stay in that character the whole time.
Staying in the makeup. Yeah. The whole thing. So you're like,
wow.
And then I had to travel an hour each way to work. So what is that?
Yeah. That's
18-hour day.
A long day.
But we were still joking and shooting the shit with all the VFX artists, and it's
right.
It's the crazy life we all lead.
Yeah. What do you want your legacy to be, Cameron? When it's all said and done, what do you want people to walk away with when they think of your name?
I want to be on people's work list. I want to be on talented people's work lists. I read an interesting article that Brad Pitt, it was about Bullet Train, and Brad Pitt was like, I have a yes and no list on people I work with. Like, I'll work with them again or I won't. I want to be on everyone I respect's work again list. Yes, I would absolutely work with that person again. Yes, I would tell you to work with that person again. That, I think, is, the respect of your peers. That would mean more to me than anything.
Yeah. And I think it's important for people that are listening that want to be actors or anything else in the entertainment industry that you should always be on the person's work list. And
Absolutely.
That's the whole goal, right?
Especially when you're fans of people, because if you get to a place where you're successful, you have a responsibility, in my opinion, to be that person for someone else, because you probably came across people that were like that for you. And sometimes it can be devastating when you meet a hero and they're not like that. But when they are like that, it's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's very well said. I know before we leave here, I want to talk about, again, American Horror Stories. That just came out, and I know yours is coming up September 1st. So we all have to 1st, be
man.
Yeah, excited about that.
Excited.
Yeah. And then Southern Gothic, another thing that just wrapped. Can we talk about that at all, or is that kind of hush-hush at this point?
I just watched the final cut, actually. I got it like literally yesterday before we were doing this. We were scheduled to meet here, and I got to watch it. It was awesome, and they're going to try to go do some film festivals, hopefully, and it'll come out next year. But it was a pleasure working with Lily Simmons and Tom Bauer and Kim Coates and Tom Schulman and Rick Wallace, who are all, these Hollywood heavy hitters. I was like, what am I doing here?
Well, you belong there for sure. You do great work.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and we just, thank you for being on the show with us tonight. I know you have a lot of great stuff coming up, and we, love the stuff that you've already done.
Thank you for saying
you have a long career ahead of you, Cameron. We just, like I said, we're excited to see where it goes.
Thank you so much, Dave, for having me. And I love being on the show. Love what you're doing. Your message is absolutely needed for the young independents out there. And good luck, man. And hopefully I can come back on soon.
Well, you're always welcome on this show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'll talk to you soon.